Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. We are wrapping up the final days of October. Had a huge record breaking hurricane still out there, weaker than it was. We'll talk a little bit about the stadium effect and a little bit about that storm and what else is going on across the country coming up. Well, here's a fascinating video. This is actually the hurricane hunters coming out of the clouds of the solid part of a hurricane. Of course, we're looking at Melissa here and into the eye wall. And so there are some features about the eye wall, and I'll cover that here in just a few more slides, talking about the dynamics of a hurricane. But this is just fascinating to watch. And this is the so called stadium effect. And it's named that because it looks like the inside of a typical bowl arena where, the game would be played down on the bottom of this video, and the seats, the stands, so to speak, would be on the outside. So you're looking at the eye wall. This is the most sheared environment you can possibly have. So the winds are screaming toward the center of the storm, and then they are forced to rise in, again, a very extreme convergent zone right along the eye wall. So these are, I guess you would say, they're supercells in a sense that they are very high storms you're seeing on the stadium seats, which is the far part of this image. But they also are slanted radically, and they may have tornadic circulations, and we do detect those when they get close to land. And there's some frictional interaction that actually helps the lower parts of those storms to rotate a little bit more, especially in the outer bands, maybe not so much in the eye wall. But at this point, we're talking about this storm had actually deepened a little bit before landfall to a very low central pressure and a maximum sustained wind of 185 miles per hour. So again, a fascinating thing to look at. Amazing that anybody has the courage to go fly into that like that. Let's talk a little bit more about that storm, way it looked, and a little bit more about the structure of a hurricane. Well, for reference, this is what the IR satellite loop looked like just an hour or so before it made landfall there in southwest Jamaica. And you can clearly see how well defined this eye was, really clear in the center, no evidence really of any dry air around the outsides making any inroads into this storm. It was just about dynamically perfect for a hurricane. And so that just kind of gives you an idea where the storm was, roughly where those images were taken. And just real quick, so if you're talking about the dynamics of a hurricane, and I've talked about this before, and mostly what I refer to is to make sure people understand that at the surface, this is the ocean surface here, this certainly is low pressure, as we've discussed. But in the upper atmosphere, this is actually a high pressure area where the circulation is out and around in a anticyclonic fashion. In other words, it's clockwise like a high is in this hemisphere, while the low down here is certainly going counterclockwise. And you have the moisture evaporating, and then when it condenses, it releases its latent heat, and that is a powerful energy source for a storm like this. But you'll notice, because this is a high here, there's actually a sinking motion that goes this way. Why? Because air wants to naturally move from areas of high to low pressure. So the center of a eye is cleared out because that sinking motion tends to basically destroy cloud cover. So sinking motion tends to take clouds and dissipate them, whereas rising motion, given enough moisture, will tend to form clouds. And you can even see that stadium effect in this diagram, this comet program diagram here, where the high pressure bubble kind of shrinks a little bit and gives the effect of, again, looking at the interior of a stadium. So where is Hurricane Melissa right now? It is plaguing the central islands, basically, of the Bahamas, which run, all the way through here. I guess it would skew a little bit more toward the southeastern Bahamas, really. But there's a lot of islands in the Bahamas. Anyway, it doesn't have a real defined eye wall structure, but within the last couple of frames, we've seen a resurgence once again of those colder cloud tops. Not nearly the storm it was, but still a very serious storm nevertheless. Hurricane warnings in effect for the Bahamas. This is a path of where Melissa is headed and where it's been. It last week, in the early last week even, it was just meandering along. The one thing I commented on when doing this video, though, is that this, unlike other storms this year, almost all the storms this year did this. They came out of a higher latitude, so these latitude lines would be like that. So they started at a higher latitude and then they curved back out to sea. Nearly all of them did that. This started at a lower latitude, and that had an implication here that the waters down here in the Caribbean would just be warmer and undisturbed. Basically, they'd never, well, I shouldn't say never, but rarely do they get cold fronts down there. And so the water was just really, really warm. And also, this time of year, you start to get increasing wind shear across the continental U.S., even into parts of the islands. But this far south, that's even hard to come by. So this storm was basically allowed to meander along, move very slow, even back up a little bit there for a while. It really maintained its, and really, I should say, increased its strength right there to hurricane status, and then quickly to major hurricane status. Seemed to wobble around, stall a little bit, and then headed almost, well, really not northeast, but north-northeast, really towards southwestern Jamaica. So over the next 7 days, there are no forecasts for tropical development in the Atlantic. If we go out 2 to 3 weeks, the Climate Center is kind of highlighting this area here in the Western Caribbean, both on week 2 and week 3. This gets us solidly into November. So they're watching that area. And the tally, in case you missed it, was 13 named storms this year, 5 hurricanes, 4 of them major storms. And of course, it goes without saying that Melissa was incredibly powerful with those 185 mile per hour winds and a central pressure of 892 millibars. Pretty impressive. If we do get another storm, it's going to be Nestor. I highly doubt that we will, but it is a possibility. Well, if it weren't for the fact that we were talking about that humongous hurricane just now, this would actually be impressive by comparison for mid-latitude type systems. This is a pretty big area of low pressure here affecting the southeastern U.S., taking up a lot of real estate, with its effects being felt from southern Michigan all the way down to the Gulf. So pretty big system in the upper levels here. You can see this is a cutoff low right here. And a huge circulation around this by 18,000 feet up. The winds are assumed to be following these lines to a good approximation. You can see Melissa down here in the corner, right to my right there. And this thing is occupying a lot of attention. So this is a trough of low pressure down this way like this. Ridging building in here, another trough behind that in the northwest. Talk a little bit more about that. I did this last week. I just kind of put in yellow the surface isobar so you can see what the relationships are. And this is what we call a stacked area of low pressure, meaning the low at the surface is almost directly below the jet stream low. So this thing is not really encouraged to move very quickly. It's very slow moving, very stagnant. I've watched this surface low all day today. Meanwhile, you would expect high pressure to build at the ridge, or maybe a little, either side of it. It depends. We have one cell right there, but this is really just an extension of this entire ridge of high pressure right here. We're looking at Adventure Sky. This is another little loop here. This was taken at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The center of the low here is over Jackson, Tennessee. You can see the circulating patterns around it. And these are temperatures at 4 o'clock, including mainly a lot of upper 40s, especially here in southwest Missouri, otherwise 50s showing up on the map. And if I go ahead and take the same area and look at wind gusts this afternoon at 4 p.m., they were gusting over 30 miles per hour commonly on this side of the low. Earlier, they had wind gusts in the 40s and 50s in Oklahoma, but that has subdued quite a bit. Let's take a look at the overall pattern. This is, again, the EPS. This is done earlier in the week on Monday. And it starts on Monday and goes through this following Sunday. All it shows you is this 500 millibar flow and where the troughs are on average. This is average compiled over 7 days, where the ridges are, again, on average over that 7-day period. And there's a strong correlation between these and whether areas of low pressure develop, usually out here on this side of the trough, high pressure usually on this side of the ridge, kind of a transitional period here. And the colors just mean how far from normal are these patterns. So you would expect deep troughs like this to make an impact. So these purple colors indicate, yeah, that's a little bit below what the norms are. Keep in mind, normal charts would look very flat. So yeah, this is going to readily just point out troughs and ridges. Basically, that's its main function. And then on the temperature anomaly, again, you would expect to see below normal temperatures. right around the trough, and especially on the, well, it depends on the situation and the cloud cover and the rain, but it's really following that rule pretty well this week, with all those blues indicating below normal surface temperatures, corner of the southwest high, and much of Canada experiencing warm temperatures as well. We do have freeze warnings in effect as the seasons continue to progress, and we keep carving out more and more freeze and frost potential here, with the growing season effectively ending if this does come to pass and everything in this darker purple color does get to freezing or below. Frost advisories again from Kansas City on a small strip on the east side of that freeze warning. Let's see how that works out for high temperatures over the next several days. We'll loop ahead to tomorrow, next couple days. So here's Thursday. This is pretty anomalously cold temperatures here, with highs only in the 50s, maybe getting to 60 in parts of Georgia, Mississippi, even maybe Alabama, with the above normal temperatures in these yellow areas. The southwest is warm. In fact, they had a heat advisory around LA today that'll expire in the early evening. And then on Saturday, about 2/3 of the country is still experiencing below normal temperatures, and much below where you see these shades right here. Meanwhile, Montana is toasty for this time of year, as is much of the Intermountain West. And then we go ahead to Monday. The temperatures begin to moderate somewhat, with only a little bit of patch of slightly below normal temperatures in the southeast, much of the country warming up. And that will continue. So this goes through Monday. Then the Climate Center issues a forecast for the 6 to 10 day period. That's Tuesday through Saturday. And they're saying, yeah, it's going to be hot. Really high confidence in Utah and surrounding areas. Nothing really anomalously cool, or at least the confidence of it being so is not great. Maybe a little bit New England, and that's it. Let's talk about rain. Rain isn't really showing up in a lot of the country, actually, or snow. I watch this time of year. You kind of watch the long range charts, see if that's possible. I don't really see anything too impressive yet. Maybe extreme northern England, New England, late next week. I don't know. That's pretty vague. But we're seeing most of the rain in the country, either in the northeast, including as far west as Ohio, or maybe parts of the Virginias. And then that little bit of sliver there in northwest Washington, in the northwest part of our country, seeing some above normal rain. Take a look at that area. No, not that area. The northeast is what we'll take a look at. And you can see 2, maybe close to 3 inch totals. That little yellow right there is a 4-inch total. So yeah, pretty good soaking rains in an area largely that could use some. It's not widespread drought. There are patches up here in the northeast that could use some rain. And at the end of the day, they may end up getting it. Here is the precipitation outlook Tuesday through Saturday. So pretty high confidence. New Mexico and much of Texas will be dry. Central Plains going through a drying phase, whereas it might be a little wet in South Florida and a lot wet in the Pacific Northwest. And we'll close out by reminding you what the November forecasts are that were issued back around the 21st of this month. So it's looking at hot weather in Texas. Well, if that 6 to 10 day works out, they're off to a running start on that outlook. Otherwise, much of the country pretty neutral in terms of a forecast for temperature. And for precipitation, they are holding on to a northern plains or northern Rockies high chance for it being above normal rainfall or snowfall in the month of November. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.